We're now live, leader.
So good afternoon, everybody. I'm Nick Adams-King. I'm the leader of Hampshire County Council and the executive member for Hampshire 2050 Corporate Services, and welcome to this decision day this afternoon. With the exception of consideration of matters which are confidential or exempt, the decision day is currently being broadcast live on YouTube via the County Council website. So let me welcome, in no particular order, my colleagues from Cabinet, Councillor Jan Warwick and Councillor Zoe Huggins, the chair and vice chair of the select committee, Councillor Rob McAtter and Councillor Rod Cooper. And we've got apologies from Councillor Martin Todd, who is our opposition spokesperson, but we have Councillor Malcolm Wade. Malcolm, you're very welcome, who's going to want to talk about the first item, which is in his division. And then we've also got Councillor Malcolm Wallace, who is the opposition spokesperson for the independent group from the Green Party. And I think we've probably got apologies from Councillor Alex Crawford, who's the Labour. We've got no deputations have been received, but we received a request from Malcolm to speak on item 1. Now, I need to declare an interest in this item on the A326 waterside improvement update, because by dint of being leader of the council, I'm a member of the Solent Freeport Board. So the decision is going to be made the decision of this item has therefore been deputed to Jan to take the decision on behalf of the council. So I'll hand over to Jan, and I'm going to leave the meeting at this point because of that declaration of interest, and then come back once the item is over.
Thank you, Nick. So our first decision on the agenda this afternoon is the A326, which is the waterside improvements update, which is outlined on pages 5 to 20 on your papers. Now, Councillor Malcolm Wade is the divisional member for this area, so I believe you'd like to make a deputation at this point, if you're happy to do so now, Malcolm.
Yeah, I'm fine, if you're ready.
Brilliant, thank you. So please go ahead when you're ready.
Right, okay. I have a number of concerns over this item. Our parish council has a number of concerns over this item, and my residents, most important of all, have a number of concerns over this item. And they've given me a few issues and questions, which I've included in my short piece. I'll be through in 10 minutes. I think it's my allowed time. So I will start. The proposal for the A326 not only affects the habits of Marchwood, but holds a number of significant issues for the residents in my division of Dibden and Hythe, and those in South Waterside, the decision south of mine. I have for many years, well before this project was even dreamed about, raised concerns about this road, and always the traffic engineers believe the road's only busy north of Marchwood. Try telling that to the thousands of drivers from my division of South Waterside who queue in convoy traffic going northward on the way to work and southward on the way home. This includes the workers at one of the largest refineries and chemical plants in Europe, not to forget the countless petrol tankers and HGVs which serve that complex daily. Now, why is the A326 so critical? Now, apart from the increased development in the area it serves, it is because the waterside is a peninsula, with Southampton Water on one side and the National Park on the other. It's the only main road in and out the area, and the route most watersiders, if I could use that term, and workers travelling into out of the business use every day. Therefore, will the executive member, as is a request from my residents, now publish the full A326 traffic modelling, given that a Freedom of Information request shows existed in 2023 consultation, but was withheld from the public. This is so we can show to all those frustrated drivers why this project is doing nothing south of Marchwood, except putting in one crossing and a new junction. More of that later. One could be forgiven for thinking there might be something in that you don't want them to see. Their words, not mine. I was in a virtual meeting during the pandemic with Councillor Humby and officers when he was the lead member responsible for highways, discussing a public consultation on the A326. The most popular response was to dual it north of Dibden roundabout, but that was dismissed as too expensive and difficult. It was far cheaper just to dual it west of Totton and do a few other modifications. The cost of that was nothing like the 187 million being discussed today. It was shortly after that time I became aware of a plan to put a junction south of Marchwood, which led me to believe it was to serve APB's Strategic Land Reserve, most of which sits in my division. Well, when questioned, it was always, if not denied outright, sidestepped onto the traffic issues until relatively recently when when APB went public and I was given an email confirming that we were in contact with them. Now, the highway project was communicated at a strategic level with APB for some time, according to the Freedom of Information request, which produced a number of emails. Well, we are where we are with that one. This leads to two questions. Firstly, can the executive member confirm whether the A326 scheme is financially or operationally dependent on Associated British Ports Solent Gateway 2 proposal? Is the government funding required being given to support this project because of Associated British Ports' contribution to their growth agenda? Secondly, as with many projects, there is often an overrun. Has APB or Associated British Ports formally committed in writing to underwrite cost overruns? And if so, will that agreement be published? I ask this as there is a new proposal and they will be one, if not the main beneficiary of this new junction. As regards the projects as a whole, the impact of this proposal on the national park begs the question, how will the county comply with the statutory duty to protect the New Forest National Park when the A326 design still involves land take and increased traffic pressures? I know that they will be a consultee, but are we looking to mitigate the impact on the national park, which leads to the biodiversity issue? Biodiversity net gain. Can Hampshire County Council confirm how much county-owned or third-party land is being proposed for 30-year use as biodiversity net gain, and whether this restricts future community or environmental uses? The proposal will probably take between 3 and 4 years to complete. As this is the main route out of the waterside, this will be an immense amount of delay and disruption to waterside motorists and the logistical elements of the waterside businesses. In a briefing I had on this proposal, I asked, is there a traffic management plan for this period of disruption? The answer I received was there was not. But they would always try and keep one side of the road open. How can we agree to a scheme that does not retain an alternative plan to keep traffic moving? When Southern Water decided to dig up Redbridge flyover, it resulted in delays of over 2 to 3 hours for waterside residents trying to get into Southampton, late for hospital appointments, late for school, late for job interviews, and very many other appointments. So I asked, what mitigation will the residents in my division have during this period? Again, there was none being considered. As a mitigation example, we have a ferry service required a fraction of the funding to get back in service, which would actually take cars off the A326. Just as an example, we haven't had any help with that. How can you agree to this proposal without alternatives planned laid down to prevent residents from my and other divisions suffering for years of traffic delay and chaos? I understand the traffic safety measures we need to close off the junctions and the rationale for some of the scheme, but it all seems to hinge on one point: the Associated British Ports junction south of the Pilgrim Pub, double roundabout, one on Hive Road and the other on the A326, to take all the Marchwood traffic along with Solent Gateway 2. The automotive shipping business requires a heavy HGV car transfer logistics model. How is the impact of the extra volume of HGV traffic being vectored into the current scheme? Because if it has, then it firms up the point the plan being made is to address the Associated British Ports plans. If it has not, then how do we know it's fit for purpose to take on the extra HGV traffic? The overwhelming bulk of the automotive business are currently around 820,000 vehicles annually in Southampton, which the APB want to increase. How will this go via HGV? All of it will go via HGV car transporters. So you see the issue around this at our point. Finally, I asked in the briefing, was the A326 roundabout junction to be a traffic light system to equalise movement north to south with east to west? And was advised that was not in the plan, as other junctions are having traffic lights. Any new junction on the A36 south of Marchwood must not disadvantage motorists and logistics going to from Hythe and Dibden and South Waterside. Therefore,
Councillor
traffic
Wade,
light
you have
system
1 minute
on-
remaining.
I'm finishing now. Therefore, a traffic light system on the roundabout, as the most port entrances, just look at the Port of Southampton and other ports, has to be part of the project. Unless, of course, you plan to put in a flyover, which I really don't expect you're planning to put in. We need to make it safe and easy for residents in our division to get to work and come home. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Malcolm. I know this is a huge and significant project, and I started to write down your comments and questions, but I stopped. And what I would request of you, if you haven't done so already, is whether you could send a copy of that presentation to myself and to Emma Noyce, because then we can give you a proper response if you're happy to do that.
What I'll do, rather than send my rhetoric, I'll send the questions. How about that?
Yeah, if you could sift it, that would be wonderful. And
Yes,
what you're very welcome to sit on this call and listen or drop off and listen online or whatever you prefer as we continue. So thank you so much
no problem
for coming along this afternoon. That was brilliant. Emma, I normally hand over to you now to introduce this paper more formally, and you may want to pick up some of the points that Malcolm's raised, or you may just want to sort of respond to them more fully later on.
Thank you, Councillor Warwick. I will hand over to Martina Ollie to introduce the paper alongside Frank Baxter, and Natalie Wigman may also have some views. And so Martina will introduce the paper. I would suggest that a number of answers to the questions are actually contained within the paper and the published paper that is before members. And I would also just point to the recommendations, which the purpose of this decision is about the submission of a planning application and some other matters. So I think a number of points raised, and it will be helpful. Thank you, Councillor Wade, to get the questions. May be a matter for consideration, but may not be pertinent to the specific decision before us. So I'll hand over to Martina to introduce the paper, and then very happy for any of the team to answer any particular questions you have, Chair. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. This paper is seeking to reconfirm approval to submit planning application and outline business case for this biggest ever scheme Hampshire has delivered. There's also some additional other recommendations in the paper, one of which is delegate authority to the Director of Hampshire 2050 to make the necessary arrangements for the submissions. Then also that the scheme design is noted, a description of which is included in the report, that the key risks are noted, and that the executive member approves the inclusion of County Council land in the biodiversity net gain strategy. This strategy will be submitted as part of the planning application. If submitted, then we expect a planning decision in approximately a year's time, and the DFT funding decision would be expected sometime mid next year, so in the summer next year. And this would then both enable us to move to the next step, that being the detailed design of the scheme. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Martina. Frank, are you happy to speak now?
Thanks, Councillor Warwick. Just in terms of Councillor Wade's point, I think we can give him some reassurance that the decision that is before you is not to implement the scheme. And many of the points that he's raised can be dealt with through the detailed design stage, which comes next. And that includes also the modelling that he was talking about. The other thing I think, which is also really important to say, is that the port development is subject to a separate regulatory development consent order process, and also is not the subject of this decision table report. Thank you.
That's very helpful. Thank you so much. Natalie, do you want to add anything?
Nothing to add to what Martina and Frank have already said, but thank you.
Perfect, thank you. I'm just going to move to our colleagues. Councillor Huggins, have you got any comments or questions you'd like to make at this stage?
I think Frank, you highlighted two of the points that I was going to raise, and I think Emma, you also suggested that, I mean, the report is very detailed, but actually when you go through that detail, it does contain some of those answers for you, Councillor Wade. It's very clear to me that the main aim is obviously about traffic calming, traffic safety and congestion within that area. And also contained within the report, there is a lot about the environmental sensitivity and net gain and biodiversity. So I just want to make sure that those points are highlighted within the report. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor Huggins. Councillor McAtter.
No, I've got no questions. Thanks, Jan.
Thank you so much. Councillor Cooper.
No, I've got nothing, no questions or anything to add. Thank you.
And Councillor Malcolm Wallace. I suspect you've had a good look at this paper, and I just wondered if you would like to comment on how it aligns with LTP4 and the climate change and the biodiversity aspects in this paper.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions, and one was very much on that theme. My understanding in paragraph 38 is that the climate change impact assessment has not been performed yet, and it's I'm struggling a little bit to understand how we can move forward with the projects when we haven't done the climate impact assessment. And then if we're doing it after the decision's been made, then what's the point of doing it? So that's one question. It's like, aren't we doing this in the wrong order? Climate impact assessment should be surely up front. And this the second one was around the cost increase. Paragraph 24 talked about a £62 million or 50% cost increase in the last 18 months. I wasn't sure if this, maybe I'm missing it from my copy, but there is there another appendix which explains this cost increase? Because there is a little bit explained in that paragraph. There was reasons provided for 13 million of the 62 million cost increase in the paragraph, but that's still and it looks like they were frankly misses. They appeared to be misses from the original bid. But that still leaves 49 million that hasn't been explained. So I wondered if there was another appendix. So yeah, there are a couple of questions there, please.
Frank, are you happy to respond on those two significant points?
I'll let Martina answer the cost increase one, and I'll answer the one about the climate change, if that's okay. I'll give you a bit of time to think about it, Martina. So on the climate change one, again, I refer back to what the decision is about, and this is about submitting basically it's submitting the planning application and also the business case. At the moment, we don't have the information to fully comply with detailing all of the carbon analysis because we're still running some of the modelling work. So by the time we get to the planning application and the business case, all the information that you'd expect to be formed, all the data that's necessary to do a carbon assessment will be ready, and a full carbon assessment will be done. It'll also then be determined by the planning authority when it comes through planning, and it will then also again be determined as we approach a future decision date, if we get there, to deliver the scheme.
Perfect, thank you. Martina, are you happy to pick up the increased costing point?
Absolutely. As it says in paragraph 24, the 125 million, which was quoted in the January 24 report, was based on the feasibility design. So that was obviously pre-January 24, when that cost was arrived at. And also, the other thing, obviously, the latest cost estimate, which was carried out in summer this year, is on the basis of the preliminary design. So we're at the next stage. We've now got a far better understanding of what is included in the scheme. And more importantly, this latest cost estimate really does include everything now. So for example, we've now got B&G, which we didn't have as part of the cost estimate previously because B&G at the time wasn't a requirement. But we've also got land included, we've got lane rental included, which wasn't even on the horizon back in January 24. So this is now really a total cost estimate and looks at all the aspects, not just the design elements of the scheme.
I guess just on that, good explanation, thank you. When you read the paragraph, because it only really, a lot of it is about biodiversity net gain. It gives the impression that all the cost increase is to do with environmental reasons. It's to do with biodiversity net gain, and that is not the case at all when you actually read the detail. That by far the biggest changes are for other reasons, like you've just explained. So just a comment, might be something you want to consider in going forward in future reports. Overall, I mean, okay, I understand the answers, but I'd be nervous both about the questions that Malcolm Wade has raised and about the costs and about climate change, but whether we're at a stage where we should be considering submitting this planning application at this point. But that's not my decision to make.
Thank you so much, Malcolm. Emma, did you want to make any additional comments in conclusion before we move to the recommendations?
I don't have any additional comments to make. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So if there are no further questions, I'm happy to move to the recommendations, which are outlined on paragraphs 2 to 6 on page 5 of your papers. And I'm happy to approve those recommendations. Thank you so much. Can I just thank Councillor Wade for coming along this afternoon? You made some very valid, important points. So thank you so much. And thank you, Councillor Wallace, as well. So we now move to item 2, and I will now read the formal notice to exclude the press and public before asking the webcast to be stopped. So for this item, I agreed that the public be excluded from this decision day during the following items of business, as it is likely, in view of the nature of the business to be transacted or the nature of the proceedings, that if members of the public were present during these items, there would be a disclosure to them of exempt information within paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972. And further, that in all the circumstances of the case, the public interest in maintaining exemptions outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information for the reasons set out in the reports. So please can I ask that the webcast is now stopped? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Warwick. I'll let you know.